Just ahead on CTV News, protecting our sacred spaces with increased penalties. Plus, lawmakers and partners are back in Annapolis fighting for a tougher Noah's Law.
I'm here at the Maryland Senate, where Mothers Against Drunk Driving are rallying around a law that would toughen restrictions for convicted drunk drivers. Coming up on CTV News.
And a local church is fighting for life. Those stories and more up next.
Good evening. I'm Patricia Vallone with a CTV News update. Well, two Prince George's lawmakers introduced legislation that would enhance penalties against violent offenders if their crimes are committed in or around educational facilities, hospitals, places of worship, or funerals. The measure, called Sacred Spaces, would ensure a felony conviction for violators in addition to any other penalties imposed. The legislation, which was proposed at the request of State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, would also allow a judge to imprison violators for up to 10 years.
At a time when we're looking at reform and potentially lowering individuals' exposures, we have to also keep in mind that there are people in our community counting on us to make smart decisions and to keep them safe.
I'm presiding bishop of over 282 churches, and all of the congregations, no matter where they are, how large or small they are very much concerned about their safety.
I think this bill strikes the right balance of giving a judge discretion about whether or not to issue the enhancement. There's no mandatory provision of it.
And a hearing on HB 547 is scheduled for this afternoon in the House Judiciary Committee. A long-fought-for bill is returning to the state legislative docket. CTV's Mariah Jalad is in Annapolis with a group that's hoping this year the bill will finally pass.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving are supporting two bills in the Maryland legislature that they say would close a gap in a 2016 law that lets convicted drunk drivers avoid ignition interlock systems. An ignition interlock. MAD says that's all it takes to prevent more than 3,000 yearly attempts in Maryland by potential drunk drivers to operate a vehicle. The device connects to a vehicle's ignition system, and if a driver's blood alcohol level is above .025, it prevents the car from starting. Noah's Law, passed in 2016, requires every person convicted of an alcohol-related driving offense to have the device installed in their car. However, offenders that receive probation before judgment, or PBJ, are not required to install interlocks. Rich Leota is the father of the fallen Montgomery County police officer the law is named for, and he's fighting to get the loophole closed.
All we're trying to do is, at this point, trying to make sure that we close that loophole. If they don't pass this legislation this year, either they want to save lives or they're going to continue to have blood on their hands.
Attached to a vehicle for someone who has had a previous DUI conviction, even a PBJ, can really save lives on the roads of our highways and local streets.
Research has repeatedly found that drivers who have interlocks installed are up to 75% less likely to have repeat drunk driving offenses than those who do not have an interlock device. This is the 10th consecutive session of my legislative career that I have, in fact, introduced drunk driving legislation.
The Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee is hearing the bill today, and it has been cross-filed in the House. From Annapolis, Mariah Jalad, CTV News.
Thanks, Mariah. Well, with 2 months left in the current General Assembly session, there are a number of bills involving education that are receiving a lot of attention. Lawmakers are considering the governor's budget proposal, which includes a $500 million increase for K-12 public schools. The overall education budget is more than $9 billion and would cover all programs under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. It comes amid fiscal concerns. Another measure, the Boost Scholarship Program, would include private school scholarships for low-income families. The legislative session runs through April 8th. And an emergency bill on election recounts gets its second reading in the Senate this morning. The measure would require a petitioner to select the method for conducting the recount from a limited list. It would also require local board of elections to preserve and store paper records.
Recently in Maryland, we've had a number of very close elections and have needed recounts. 2 years ago, the General Assembly enacted a law to indicate when a recount is possible, because if you lost by 20 points, you shouldn't take up the boards of elections' time. So who's allowed to ask for a recount and who pays for it, depending on how close it is. This year now it's time to figure out how to run the recount. We have outdated language that refers to systems we no longer own or no longer use. And we also had to update the law to accommodate mail-in ballots and internet-delivered ballots.
And Senate Bill 115 is cross-filed with HB 371. And you're watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone. Coming up, a local church stands behind the fight for life. And we'll have that story and more after the break.
Wake up and clear the clutter. Send your old electronics packing. In Maryland, you can e-cycle through many manufacturers or through your county, and usually it's free. Visit mde.maryland.gov/e-cycling to find out how to recycle electronics in your county. mde.maryland.gov/e-cycling.
Welcome back. Well, a local church is opposing a bill that would provide medical aid in dying for some terminally ill Marylanders. First Baptist Church of Glen Arden International says it does not support Senate Bill 443, also known as the End of Life Option Act. The measure would allow a licensed physician to provide medication to a patient that is intended to end their own life. Under the bill, the patient must be terminally ill, received a prognosis of death within 6 months, and can make their own medical decisions. Reverend Taya Wilson says that the bill is immoral and dangerous.
In our church, we have had many members who have received a prognosis of death by their doctors, who we've seen God completely heal. So that's first and foremost. We believe that God is a healer and we've seen him do it. There's nothing impossible for God. That's first. Second, we understand how critical it is for patients and doctors to have trust between them. And we believe that introducing the doctor's ability to kill now and assist in killing would certainly erode that trust.
And the bill has been introduced in the Maryland General Assembly for years, but has failed to pass. A House hearing on the measure is set for February 16th at 1 p.m. Well, would you support a 1-cent increase in the state sales tax if the money was dedicated to transportation projects? If you're like most Marylanders, then the answer is no. That's the result of a poll released today by Annapolis-based Gonzalez Research and Media. Nearly 6 in 10 Marylanders say they oppose any increase in the state sales tax. Maryland's Transportation Trust Fund faces a $3.1 billion deficit over 6 years due to declining gas tax collections and other factors. Closing the gap would require cuts to projects or an infusion of cash. A 1-cent increase would add about $1 billion in additional revenue to the state coffers. Well, getting around tomorrow may be more difficult for people who use DoorDash, Uber, or Lyft. Thousands of ride-sharing drivers are expected to go on strike across the country on Valentine's Day. Justice for App Workers, which represents 100,000 drivers, says the contractors are sick of working 80-hour weeks just to make ends meet. They say the drivers are constantly concerned for their safety and that they worry about being deactivated with a click of a button. No demonstrations are planned for our area, but drivers do plan to target several big cities, including Philadelphia, Chicago, and Newark. The protests come 1 week after Lyft announced that it would guarantee weekly earnings for drivers. Uber Eats says it will launch new features, including more payment options. Well, police arrest a suspect in connection with a fatal shooting in Temple Hills over the weekend. He's been identified as 36-year-old Estep Kyler of Largo. Just after 4 a.m. on February 10th, police say that Kyler and 40-year-old Andrew Washington of D.C. were sitting in a car parked in the 2400 block of Iverson Street. The two got into an argument, and that's when Kyler shot Washington several times in the car, killing him. Officers say that he also shot himself during the fight. In this security camera video, you can see Kyler with a swollen eye knocking on a door asking for help after the altercation. Kyler has been charged with first and second-degree murder. And police arrest two suspects wanted for a fatal shooting that occurred in late December. They are 18-year-old Bilal Ansariden of Bowie and 19-year-old Kemonte Jennifer of the district. On December 31st at 10:30 p.m., officers responded to a shooting in the 1400 block of Dunbar Oaks Drive in Capitol Heights, and that's where they found 36-year-old Nelson Bonilla Reyes of Capitol Heights suffering from a gunshot wound. He was taken to a hospital where he later died. Ansariden and Jennifer are charged with first and second-degree murder. Jennifer is awaiting extradition from the district to Prince George's. A Riverdale man has been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for wire and healthcare fraud. The suspect is 50-year-old Lambert M. Boom. Officials say that M. Boom, who worked as a program administrator with Holy Health Care Services, paid Medicaid beneficiaries to come into his office. He then used their personally identifiable information to bill Medicaid for services that were not provided. The suspect also created fake employees. M-Bomb will have to pay back more than $4 million in restitution. Still ahead here on CTV News, a county council member pays homage to a historical African-American travel guide. We'll share more on her interactive green book after the break.
Hey there, sports fans, and coming up in a bit, UMD women's lacrosse coach Kathy Reese gives her thoughts on the team's tough 2024 schedule. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Thanks for staying with us. Well, Councilmember Crystal Oriatha has launched a campaign this month she calls #EverythingBlack, including an interactive green book that highlights local Black business owners, artists, authors, and entrepreneurs.
So it tells you how you can eat Black, read Black, watch Black, even listen Black. And like you said, it's interactive. And the idea was really about the era around Jim Crow where a lot of people didn't know, Black people, when they're traveling, what was safe, where could they stay, where could they eat. And then in Prince George's County, we wanted to pay homage to that and say, how can you support these Black businesses in your community? So I'm excited about the things that I know about, but I'm also really excited about the things that my staff added to the list that I can actually learn about.
And you can visit the Green Book at the website on your screen. The council member is also introducing legislation to create a Black startup fund in order to bring more Black businesses to Prince George's County.
All right, sports fans, we begin your Tuesday sports page with some MLB news. The Washington Nationals will look to add some depth to their roster in 2024 as they have signed veteran outfielder Jesse Winker to a minor league deal. Winker, who was an all-star in 2021 with the Cincinnati Reds, is a solid player, averaging a strong .369 on-base percentage and .813 on-base plus slugging percentage over the course of his career. But the former first-round pick will be hoping to revive his career in Washington after not playing his best ball since his All-Star season. Winker, who was with the Milwaukee Brewers last season, had a batting average of .199 and an on-base percentage of .320, which were both career lows. Winker also got an invite to spring training with hopes of making the opening day roster. The Nats opened up the season versus the Reds on March 28th. Meanwhile, the UMD women's lacrosse team's spring season is underway as the Lady Terps won their first game of the season against St. Joseph's last week, 16-3. The Lady Terps will be challenged this season, though, as over half of their opponents finished in the top 25 of the Intercollegiate Women's Lacrosse Coaches Association poll last year. But head coach Kathy Reese views this tough schedule as a potential learning experience.
I think that's how we learn about ourselves, right? We're going to play some of the best teams in the country, and every team's going to do something a little different, but that's how we then learn as coaches what we need to be better. And so it's, again, we have a very tough non-conference schedule, that's for sure, but we're ready to get going with it.
There's also some excitement surrounding the season for the Lady Terps as they will return to the field hockey and lacrosse complex after playing last season at Sekou Stadium due to renovations. The new and improved complex features a new locker room and facilities as well as a new scoreboard. And Reese touched on this, and she's looked forward to playing there.
It is beautiful. You know, we do share with field hockey. We're close with that coaching staff. Two of our programs are two of the, most just tradition of excellence in each of our sports and the NCAA. And so for our athletes to have a place they can call home and have access to us a little more readily than we've had in the past has been something that's been really important and special.
The Lady Terps will match up next versus Syracuse on Saturday. And wrapping up sports, be sure to go out and support your local high schools tonight as some girls basketball teams will take the court. Parkdale will host Flowers, Northwestern will try and get back in the winning column against Bowie, and finally, Crosson will be on the road tonight taking on Oxon Hill. Parkdale and Flowers will tip off at 5:30 while the rest of the games will begin at 7:15. And that is your Tuesday sports page. Simon Buggs, CTV Sports.
Thanks, Simon. And now let's get a quick check on our 3-day weather forecast. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 31 degrees. Wednesday, sunny with a high near 44. Thursday and Friday, mostly sunny with temperatures in the low 50s. That wraps up our newscast. Join us again tomorrow evening. Have a great night.
Innovation transforms the world, moving us forward not just in steps, but in leaps and bounds. Innovation created a healthcare system so extraordinary, it not only improves the lives of veterans, it transforms the lives of healthcare professionals, collaborating through integrated care teams, accessing the latest technology, working with the most advanced medical science, and even creating it. Like discovering new ways to integrate technology with the human body. It's a unique culture of transformation that leads to solutions that best serve our veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs, where innovation ensures those who served our nation are served by the very best. See how a career at VA can transform your future.
This is where Leah learned to dribble, where James first picked up a brush, where Bella made meal kits for neighbors in need. This school year, many YMCAs are transforming some of their spaces for virtual learning, dedicating staff and even providing meals. So now, this is also where they will master long division, study photosynthesis, and learn when they need support, the Y is there for them. The Y, forever learning for a better us.
A lot of my best memories of the holidays are centered around my grandmother. My grandmother's sweet potato pie, it just felt like a hug. I remember every time we'd come to her house, once you open that door, like it just hits you and you're like, okay, the pies are ready, it's time. Food is a source of comfort. Food really helps bring people together.